Hey there, guys. Hey, it's another sort of old man rant from me today. So there's something that's going on these days that I don't really understand, and that is the complaints that I see from time to time about Major League Baseball games being too fast with the pitch clock. I don't get it. I really don't get it, all right? So, let me tell you a little bit of the background behind this, right? I've actually, I stopped watching baseball live after the 2019 World Series. Apologies for my dog that's going nuts because there are two dogs walking by the house. And anyway, she's really excited. I stopped watching baseball live after the 2019 World Series. And to be honest with you, I didn't even watch many games of that series live. So I'm living in the Washington, D.C. area. And of course, I was excited that the Nationals made it to the World Series despite having a lackluster season and having lost all of their key players. I watched as much as I could, but, it was difficult. The games didn't really start until like 8:20 at night. I had 3 little kids at home. For a little while, my wife was back in Taiwan trying to get dental work done. That's another story. And I had work every morning, like the next day. I was working from... I actually was working from home because I had to watch the kids here. Anyway, that's a long story, but it was tricky. It was not easy to do, and I simply couldn't stay up at night until like 11:30 to 12 o'clock every single night to watch these games. And when I was trying to watch the games live, it was really an ordeal because I'd sit down to watch it and like nothing would happen. The pitcher would stand there and hold the ball, and you wouldn't see any sort of action. You get runners on base, nobody would try to steal. There'd be no kind of play put on. There would be no bunt. There'd be no hit and run. There'd be nothing, right? We just sort of stand around and wait for somebody to hit a home run, right? This is not entertaining baseball. This is not an entertaining sport. It's a pain to watch. And so I become really confused when I read comments from people online who say things like, oh, I wish that the game would be slower so I could get up like I usually do in the middle innings and wander around and not pay attention. I mean, if you want to wander around somewhere, like go to a mall, go to a place where you can wander. Why are you going to a baseball stadium and paying this like huge surcharge so you can walk around and like look at the stuff that's for sale or something? I don't get it. I don't understand that at all. All right, there was one particular person that I interacted with briefly who said that, oh, well, there's never been a prerogative in baseball to play the game quickly. That is incorrect. In fact, that is so incorrect, the person should be embarrassed for saying it. There's always been a prerogative there always was a prerogative to play the game quickly. Not just the fact that in the rule book, umpires were instructed to play quickly, but the fact that the game was played under the sun for so many years. I mean, for decades and decades. And the sun offered that incentive to like get the game going. There are humorous accounts that we can find and we can talk about involving teams trying to stall for darkness, just as in other parts of baseball history, they've tried to stall the game so that the rain would wash the whole thing out and it would be called and things like that. And there's been all sorts of controversies in the past over whether it's still too dark to play or not. It's amazing how much we forget about that. And the other thing that's amazing is how much we forget about sort of like the history of baseball that actually does exist on video, right? So, I mean, we can talk about things like, the fastest game of all time, which I found on the blog, which was, 34 minutes or something, a full 9-inning game. I mean, okay, yeah, so that stuff is pretty unbelievable from like 1911, 1912, whatever year it was, right? That's kind of hard to imagine. But it's not that hard for us to imagine games that were about 2 hours long because we can go onto YouTube and find numerous copies of these games, right? Because people used VCRs to record them. And, when you go back as recently as the mid-'80s, you find that most games were pretty quick and were played at a quick pace. When you go back to the 70s, you see that the pace was even faster. In fact, the further back you go, the fewer of these like foul balls you see, the fewer of this sort of like time wasting you see, and the more action you see in the game. Is there any wonder that the game of baseball was more popular in the general national image and the national imagination in those days than it is today? Maybe that has something to do with how quickly the game is played. Maybe the American public is not really so fascinated with guys adjusting their jock straps or, scratching their noses or doing these other things that we've seen as part of these close-ups that, are incessant and never-ending. In fact, as I recall, back in earlier days, maybe about 20 years ago, there was a lot of criticism online for Fox Sports and the way that they would video the World Series. You'll remember that, right? Because every time there was anything even close to a tense moment, they had these like up close shots of like the pitcher's nose, and then like he would like get up at, into the stretch or whatever, and then the camera would have to like slowly pan up to try to get back at his nose again. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous filming, and this was done largely to fill in these long gaps that were taking place in the games, especially in tense situations, which is exactly the time where you don't want the game to come down to a standstill. You want things to be played quickly so that people would be interested and would want to watch it. The biggest point of comparison that I have for all of this is the NHL. So we lived in Canada for a brief period of time, about 2013 to 2015, and I kind of fell in love with hockey. I'll admit we didn't really have a television subscription there, but I watched some hockey anyway, and we went and saw an NHL game live, and also a few minor league hockey games. And I'll tell you that the NHL is really fascinating to watch because of how quick it is, right? It's actually difficult for me to watch it casually because you can't do it. I can't do something while I'm watching a hockey game. I have to give all of my attention to the hockey game because of how fast it is and because of all the things that are happening, because of all the things you can miss and all the things that clearly the announcer is missing because he can't keep up with it, right? Now, if you compare that to hockey games from like the 80s or even the mid-90s, you'll see that things were a lot different then. There were a lot more face-offs. There were a lot more gaps in the action. There was a lot more start-stop type stuff. They did away with a lot of that, and they did away with a lot of it on purpose. They were able to figure out ways to remove unnecessary face-offs and to try to have these big periods of time, sometimes as much as 10 minutes long, of continuous action, right? That makes the sport fascinating. It makes it a lot more interesting to watch, and it means that people who watch the sport casually have a much easier time becoming really drawn in and becoming excited about it, wanting to learn more about it. That's exactly what baseball needs to be doing, instead of drawing the sport out as long as possible and losing the interest of all the casual fans. So it might be kind of a surprising stance for me to take, right? I am sort of dyed-in-the-wool baseball conservative. I'm definitely one of those, old thing good, new thing bad type of baseball thinker, right? I have always disliked things like the designated hitter. I strongly dislike interleague play. I wish that the teams would still have balanced schedules. I wish that we would go back to 154 game schedules. I'd like to see 4 divisions that don't play against teams outside of the division, have them play 154 games each, bring back double headers, have the season start in mid-April, try to finish it before October, and make sure that only the first place teams go on to the postseason. I don't see what the problem is with all of that. Those seem like obvious solutions to me to its problems. Having said that, though, anything that we can do to speed the game up, I think, is very, very good and is very welcome. Now, the next problem they need to solve is this stupid problem of batters being able to foul off pitch after pitch after pitch with those bats that have, the paper-thin handles and the sweet spots where you just sort of, try to spoil a pitch by getting your bat barely onto it and fouling a pitch off here and there and here and there. This will be a different video in the future, but when we look back at the reason why the National League went with the third strike foul bunt counting as a third strike in 1901. The reason why was to counteract these crazy strategies that would involve batters coming up and fouling off pitch after pitch after pitch by just bunting, right? This is back in the days when you had really big bats that didn't have a sweet spot. Instead, it was a big chunk of wood, and it was a lot easier to just catch the ball with the bat and hope that you either get a bunt base hit or that you foul it off and then you can go back and try again and again and again, right? They made a rule change because the game was becoming unwatchable. I think they should make a similar rule change with foul balls in general these days to create some disincentive for guys to have these bats with the paper-thin handles that can just sort of spoil and foul off pitches left and right, because it makes the game unwatchable. Nobody wants to come up there and nobody wants to go to the park and watch some idiot hit 10 foul balls in a row and talk about what a great clutch at-bat it is. That doesn't seem like a clutch at-bat to me. It seems like a waste of time. Anyway, that's just my opinion. Other people may have a different opinion. Personally, though, I'm not going to miss wandering around the concourse with my children so that they can find other expensive things for me to buy after I've already spent, $50+ a ticket just to get us in, right? I would prefer to have a game that's played quickly so that I can pay attention to the game, and so that, hey, maybe perhaps somebody of the younger generation actually is interested in the game and not just in the stuff that happens between innings or in drinking soda and eating hot dogs, or whatever it is that you eat at your local ballpark. Anyway, that's just my opinion. I mean, I think that as we focus on the game itself, I do think that it's a wonderful sport. I think it's a great game. I might actually start watching it again. Who knows? And with that, I will talk with you later. See you tomorrow. Bye.